Pearson.
Thank you, Deputy President. First of all, the Animal Justice Party wishes to express its overwhelming support for the Modern Slavery Bill 2018, and we commend all of the work by the Honourable Paul Green and everybody who's worked with you. There's really quite something extraordinary about slavery, in that it has an insidious and ugly instrument. It's been an insidious, ugly instrument in our societies for thousands of years. And we, unfortunately, when we travel the world, we actually are enjoying the fruits of slavery, be it the Taj Mahal, be it the Great Wall of China, be it the pyramids in Egypt, and some of the most glorious buildings that have been commissioned by churches and governments across Europe. So we go to these countries and we view these places, we walk amongst them and we are in awe. But there's one menacing, disturbing truth, is that in the main, all that was created by slaves. And many of them died, long lingering deaths, and being crushed by the very beautiful buildings that we actually admire today. But it comes right through to our everyday life, even within Australia. So most of the T-shirts that we might wear during summer come from acts of slavery in the sweatshops in countries of which we are learning more and more about. And yet it's very difficult for companies to even find a source of these products, and even shoes, where slavery is not at some point part of the production of these things. In fact, I think some of us may have started to feel uncomfortable walking across some of the beautiful rugs we may have procured over time and put on the floors of our house, only to learn that it is very possible that children who were chained to carpet making operations in India and Pakistan were forced to make those carpets and work long hours, and in some cases never allowed to leave the factory in which they were made. So right through to fruit picking in Australia, it has become apparent that there's been slavery. Slavery has been used in that, right through to major productions of industry and agriculture industry have been, when they've been producing and having major building productions, there have been instances where it's been shown that workers that have come to Australia to do some part-time work on some visas have actually finally found themselves in an enslaved situation. And then the worst, of course, is what has been described, and that is when people now, rather than go to the countries and exploit children and become involved in sexual exploitation of children, they can now pay a very, very small amount of money and cause a child or a person to be kidnapped, taken to a place, raped, tortured, and in some cases, like in snuff movies, murdered. It was a big step forward when extradition orders were passed, where in situations where Australians were in other countries committing offences against children, sexual abuse of children, they could either be extradited back to Australia or, even better, face charges of sexual abuse and other charges against the children which they abused in other countries, but they could face the charges from the laws here in Australia. These are very progressive. These have been very progressive advances in legislation. I have some concerns in relation to this modern slavery bill, that it could have more teeth, more strength, and be more compelling. I think the Commissioner should have far more powers, should have the power of investigation and the power to compel the relevant authorities to investigate and be able to issue warrants, so that the principle and spirit of this modern slavery bill be actually given greater strength and greater power. I understand the government is going to bring amendments to the bill, but a bill which is about stopping slavery, about preventing the harm of the vulnerable, no amendment should take away the spirit of the bill. Any amendment from any member, from any party, should only go to galvanise the strength and the principles of this bill, which is about putting our wings around and protecting and being a shield and a sword for the most vulnerable. And that includes not only children, but it includes women in situations. I listened to the description about domestic violence is a form of slavery. If people have to flee, including children, to refuges, it means they have been enslaved. So we have to be very aware that slavery can manifest in very subtle, sinister ways, and it might only be for half a day, but it is still slavery. So I implore the government, whether it is happening here or it is happening in the other place, that any amendment should only strengthen it, including the fact that this bill should also cover all government departments over which it can have power. There should be no exemption, even to small businesses. Small businesses should not be exempt in any way from the requirements and the power of this bill. And I think a good example of that is the amendment being brought by David Shoebridge to include tissue trafficking. We should bring in amendments to strengthen and prescribe more details so that this bill captures all the exploiters, all of the evil actions that can possibly cause such harm and such brutal exploitation of any living being in Australia or around the world. I commend the bill to the House.